What do you know about the future? What are your sources of knowledge about the future? Today's actions and decisions impact upon the future in many ways. We have to understand the dynamics and create our own futures. How? Micro-f3 Futures Film Festival is a prototype film screening event that focuses futures as core theme. This event aims to reveal the potential of futures-oriented films as storytelling methodology in future studies context.
I think that F3 and micro-f3 can contribute to future studies in lots of ways, but I think the big way is that future studies needs to engage people with stories about the future. If you can actually visualize something, it just means so much more to people than having something written on paper. Then I think that will make the difference between feeling disempowered to engage in the future and being empowered to engage in the future, and will go much beyond the event. Around the world, those stories will migrate, travel, transform, and emerge as different kinds of stories, and hopefully have some kind of impact on their lives and allow them to actually use the stories to make their own lives better and the lives of people in their communities better as well.
Blinky is a short near-future science fiction horror film. This film tells the story that what if a robot takes part in a family as not only household staff, but also communicator between family members. Today, many people believe that robotics technology improves their standard of lives. However, this film suggests new robot and human issue in future.
Kids are gonna love Blinky, and you will too. Blinky is so helpful around the house. It's brought us together and made us closer as a family.
He's my new best friend. He's just like one of the family.
All my friends have one, and I was really...
I know what I want for Christmas.
The first one was Blinky. It was a dystopia that became more of a dystopia and became a thriller as it went through. And the director could have taken the film in either of two directions. Could have taken the film towards sort of ethical futures and ethical robot futures. The direction of the film would have gone from dystopia to utopia. So you've got this creative futures process of opening up the film to alternative futures. The other direction that we did get was this dystopia leading on to a horrible kind of dystopia, which was a thriller. How the robot and the family communicate together, and is the robot an excuse for the family not to be together, or is the family getting around the robot and saying, look, you've got an hour with the robot and then it's back learning how to be with your family. And rather than as a replacement for the family. Interesting that he ultimately swapped the robot for the dog at a juncture.
Thanks. The first one in particular raises the topic which we're discussing now, what I call the logic base for the robots to operate on, and particularly as we move towards a singularity event. Or the issue of the logic base for me is terribly important for our children, and maybe this robot, Blinky, had a little bit of both.
Next film, Someone's Gaze, in contrast to Blinky, tells a story that a family pet covers the communication gap between family members in population reduction society in future. This film shows various small changes in future world, but also focuses something not to be changed.
かといって窓ガラスに映った疲れた自分を見るのも嫌で、あーちゃんはじっと目をつむっている。力を入れすぎて真っ赤になった右手を左手に変え、また右手に持ち替えて、そのうち両手でつり革を握る。あーちゃんの降りる駅はまだまだ遠い。
The Someone's Gaze, I think it's a really emotional film, and there's so many small details that as a kid she wanted to protect him and he wanted to protect her, and those small details that kind of made it a really special film and showed like the importance of that father-daughter connection, and I thought it was really well done.
So there seemed to be this sort of disconnect between the mother, the father and the daughter, and ultimately you see this kind of technological bridge created by the Skype or the telephone. The daughter's alone, the father's probably working diligently overseas to bring money home, but isn't actually there for the child. The worldviews there are about this sort of global disconnect that we have and how technology helps, but at the same time that there's a real emotional and human response that's required. We can't just leave everything up to technology. We've got to step in and use our ethics and our sense of moralistic duty to kind of bring our families together from that social kind of futures perspective. The metaphor is about children. It's about future generations and what we're going to be able to do for ourselves and for our children into the future.
You could really see a contrast between those two films. One was very, very dark and the other showed a bit of hope at the end, and it seems to reflect the viewpoints of each filmmaker, one saying the future's going to hell and, whereas at least the second one that had a positive note at the end, so that was interesting.
The story of The Astounding World of the Future is set in the United States in 2001 and telling contemporary American culture. This is exactly the future that people were dreaming in last century, with humor and satirical.
In this moving picture, we'll peer across time into the year 2000, into the astounding world of the future. Gaze upon the city of tomorrow, magnificent architecture of an age not yet known, a sparkling city that stretches for miles and miles like the palace of the gods. And look, personal transport pods hurtling down super boulevards at lightning speed. But what of the citizens of this gleaming metropolis? Behold, the man of 2000. His speeding jet pod is a home away from home with temperature control and an onboard amusement center that plays his favorite radio drama programs.
And for me, it's about looking forward to cities of the future and asking, well, if we're planning for these kinds of cities ourselves, what kind of alternative futures are we trying to create that gives us livable cities?
I think what was really strong for me when I watched that movie was that it really seemed to highlight the propaganda around technology utopias, which I think is very much based around that assumption that technology means progress. So it's sort of highlighting that, placing reality at the same level as the propaganda around the utopia of that existence, and it really opens up those assumptions about technology being progress, that maybe progress exists in a range of different forms. It's not just sort of embedded within technology, and makes us think and question that.
Yeah, just an observation. If you took that narration away and just had the silent film, it would be very sad. Like the announcer's the one actually hyping it up and saying this is what it's really like, but the future's really drab if you take that away from it. So it would be a completely different experience.
Next film is Mr. Pullman Wants to Fit In. The story is that how old gentleman adapts himself to modern society in order to communicate with potential woman of his dream. The film gives us a lot of hints about the simplicity of life.
Good morning, Mr. Pullman. How are you today?
Good morning, Jason. Good. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Can I get you something to eat?
What about those croissants you had?
Yeah, I think the film was actually quite interesting. It was complicated in a lot of different ways. It was actually combining the oldie world with the brand new technology. There was a lot of conflict in there with the old time music with the new technology, and a lot of the shots were quite interesting, how they had the old 1950s decor with the technology sitting there. So there was a bit of a conflict going on there, so that the film, I thought, set it up quite well. And then his everyday, how he actually, the second thing was about his everyday, how he started out, he had a routine, it was a really comfortable routine and made him feel, I guess, exceptionally and alive, and he had friends and so forth. But then that routine became disrupted. And then the technology, him trying to use it to fit into his world, and the technology was really quite a barrier. But then when he tried to use it, it became a bit of a facilitator as well. But it was a facilitator when it didn't work, so that was quite interesting. And I thought it was great when he got back onto his own 2 feet and actually got in and used the words, not text. And I think it was a real message to us that actually technology doesn't facilitate relationships. In fact, relationships can be hindered by the technology. If we want to have a nice world and I guess go on with the roses and the flowers and stuff, we have to think about where technology fits in.
Yeah, I felt very similar about a lot of it, but what I took from the first part of it was the desensitization of modern life and the way technology gets as a barrier in front of that. And as much as he felt like he needed the technology to relate to this woman, he did actually enjoy using it and getting to learn how to use the technology when really he didn't need it, and it was just a facilitator for him to be able to approach the woman.
Human relations are a technology too, so we mustn't ally the use of the word technology to computer and information technology. So he was using, in my view, CIT to engage another form of social technology. And in many ways now, social technology is more important as we go, some of the points you raised, as we go forward. So we need to recognise the lack or the gap between rates of change in CIT and rates of change in social technology. So technology doesn't just mean computers.
Is that because you believe the CIT is going forward a lot quicker than the social is catching up?
A million times.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe that was actually challenging us, because he did still have the watch, he still wound up the watch all the time, and then even when he was using the mobile phone, he sort of did the two. And is it actually challenging us to think about how do we incorporate our old world with our new world, and how do we incorporate and have both, and to have that happy life? I don't know. Maybe it is. Don't forget to look back and bring the past with you into the future. I don't know.
For me, the great challenge is to help children understand that social relations are an actual technology that are valorised, because they just sort of collapse into the CIT type technology and don't realise that things like mum and dad and family and friends and community, they're very important as well.
The Age of Stupid is a dystopian scenario of the future, set in the year 2055. 6 documentary stories in this film about the climate change are all real stories in 2008. The simulated experience of future calls to action for avoiding unpreferable future scenario.
Welcome to the Global Archive, a vast storage structure located 800 kilometers north of Norway. It contains the artwork from every national museum. There are pickled animals stacked up 2 by 2. Every film, every book, every scientific report, all stored on banks of servers. But the conditions we are experiencing now were actually caused by our behavior in the period leading up to 2015. In other words, we could have saved ourselves. We could have saved ourselves, but we didn't. It's amazing. What state of mind were we in to face extinction and simply shrug it off?
Well, I think we'd all be a little more aware of what's going on. It's kind of like switching on the lights when you know what you're going to see, really. I mean, this has been obvious since the 60s, and so none of this was new, and so we need to inquire deeply as to why is that so.
There's zero incentive for any of these big corporations to stop chopping down the Amazon. You know, and if anyone was serious about global warming, we'd be, you know, planting trees all the way through, you know, through the desert of Australia and terraforming Australia to, you know, be the way of balancing that back out. But no, that's not happening. I have to change I can't go flying. I can't do this. I can't do that. It just seems like I'm the one with the least power, yet I'm the one that has to change my lifestyle.
Good messages that are happening at our level, out and around the place. We need forms that can get in between the cracks there, and we do need to reinvigorate or invest our time into collectives and so forth that do that. There's quite like Boggy, Brisbane Organic Growers Incorporated. That's fantastic NGO, and there's a number of other NGOs where the informal structures are able to still exist within this huge institutional framework. One of the things I do and ask students, folks I'm talking to, when they watch a movie like this, is to think of the elephants in the room. In other words, what wasn't shown there? What wasn't shown? I mean, I thought what was shown was de rigueur and passé and quite well done. That was the sort of thing that would have triggered some sort of action.
The last film, Blind, shows a scenario a couple of years future after the Japan's earthquake and tsunami in March 11, 2011. This film successfully visualized Japanese citizens' invisible fear of radioactivity, which significantly affects the future.
大丈夫？あんまり無理しちゃダメだよ。
でもずっと知られないし。
何かあったらすぐ連絡してね。
では一旦ここで本日の風向きと放射性物質の拡散予報。続けてぜひ。
どうもおはようございます。
ガスマスクをつけたりっていう状況は今は実際にはないんですけれども、でも現状と似てるところがあるなと思いました。
In actual fact, what you saw everybody wearing gas masks, but she knows of nobody that does that on a daily basis in Tokyo. But there could still be some people out there. Where Eddie lives in Fukushima, she has been used to waking up and looking at the weather report, which has included the level of radiation.
I'd like to ask Eddie how she feels about the fact that her own government told the people in that area to stay at home during the disaster. How do you feel about that?
1ヶ月間電気のない生活だったので、その間情報がないかったんですね。
So for the first, for the whole month after the event, the episode, she had no electricity and therefore no access to any information. In fact, a lot of people from Fukushima left, a lot. Really. Like a lot of people from Fukushima did leave, but the ones that stayed, just listened to what they were being told by the government and other sources, and came to believe that it was okay to stay there, and that's another area that she's not happy about at all.
For a participant, if they're at a futures-oriented film festival, they become part of the future in a way. They can respond, they can participate, they can question, their imaginations are activated. So they can start to think, okay, what are the emerging issues that are being presented in these films? They can also start to question their own imagination, what type of futures do I wish for? So the futures films are in fact data for participants to engage more deeply and widely with the future. Futures-oriented film festival can create and bring to the table.
Through the films and discussions, micro-f3 attendees have realized invisible but surely existing potential of possible, probable, and preferred futures of the world. The films told us that the variety of new future scenarios are always emerging right now at this moment.